Hello, mindful friends. Today we're going to be talking about how mindfulness helps us to build a loving and compassionate relationship with ourselves so that we become our own biggest loving and compassionate support and caregiver. This is what I work on a lot with my clients and what I see a lot as something that needs to be strengthened or something that's kind of lacking that then develops a lot of other complications or difficulties in our lives and our experience of life is this lack of self-love and trust of self. And in my own healing journey and as I was learning mindfulness, this was a huge component in that as well. So when we talk about being our own largest support and caregiver, it's different, like when we say self-love, it's different than like the egotistical form of thinking we're all so great and kind of this heightened sense of putting ourselves above other people or prideful kind of love of self. Because when you look at that prideful love of self is not actually true, accepting, compassionate love. Because it's assuming that you outperform other people, you're better than other people, you do things better. And then it sets this expectation on self that is a requirement for being loved. So there is a love for self because we have this heightened sense of being better or being grandiose or large. And this is a very fragile kind of love towards self, false love towards self, because the second that feels threatened or questioned or vulnerable, it all comes crashing down, and the doubt behind it is really large. It's really big, fragile, large doubt behind there. And so somebody questions our worth, or we lose at something, or one of our skills is doesn't have a great light shown on it, and all of a sudden that love for self turns into anger, anguish, disappointment, condemnation. We will have to push ourselves to being that greatness. So it's not that prideful kind of I'm a winner. That was my kind of self-love growing up. As I even had a quote as a child of I'm a winner, that's just what I do. I was competitive, and my love of self was very based on pride and performance, and if I was the best. And like I said, this is very fragile kind of self-love and puts a lot of pressure on ourselves, and there's nothing honest or stable about that kind of love. It's very wishy-washy and leaves us feeling really quite vulnerable and bad if we don't live up to that prideful expectation. So we kind of want to shift that and come into what is a true loving and compassionate relationship with self. It means you love yourself as you are, without that expectation of perfection, that I don't have to be perfect in order to be accepted and loved. And this kind of compassionate relationship with self is what's developed and then also used throughout your mindfulness practice. Because we're not entering into the practice thinking, I'm going to do this to get better than everybody else and arrive at this state where I'm higher than everybody else. When we kind of remove the hierarchies and labeling and levels within it, and it's really just about understanding yourself just as you are. So we want to develop this ability to connect with self with an open mind and an open heart to what is. If we have this false, prideful relationship with self, we will always be tainted in the way we look at ourselves. We'll be looking for the perfection. We'll be looking for what's keeping us from that. We'll be looking for the differences in it and, judging self on how to get there. Whereas with this loving, compassionate relationship with self, we will be using that curiosity that we talked about last time to just explore what is, what we are going through. And like we all know with friends or relationships or people in our lives, if we approach them in non-judgment, without a projected expectation of how they should be or what they should be doing, and just let them open up and explain how they are, we learn a lot more about them and their experience and what they're going through and what they truly need, versus if they're trying to hide things or put on a face or say what we're expecting. So same with ourselves. If we're reconnecting with self in this compassionate curiosity and openness, this real love, we get to hear what's really going on without these other voices getting in the way, telling us this is how far you are from perfection. This is what it should be expecting. This is what you should be feeling. And all of that hides us from what's really going on. And that mindful healing comes from that deep understanding of self. So when you're there, able to listen to yourself, honor what you're hearing in a true way, you get to hear what's actually going on, what you're really feeling, what you're really experiencing, what your vulnerabilities actually are. And that loving listening and connection turns into that really deep understanding of what you really need. Prideful kind of love doesn't want to even get there to the true needs because it's so afraid of admitting that there are some, or that there's that gap between where we want to be and where we are. And so this loving, true relationship with self allows you to express the actual need. I really do need a little more connection right now. I really am feeling a lack of belonging. And when you have that accepting, compassionate relationship with self, it lets you see that. It says, oh yeah, that does hurt, right? That lack of feeling like you belong does hurt, which leads to you being able to see what you really need and how to nurture that. So I need to come back into a sense of belonging and remembering, oh, right, I developed that within. What are my resources of that? And it gives you this confidence as well to reach out, find your supports and resources to help meet those needs. Prideful love of self will tell you, you don't need other people. Don't reach out. Don't show your vulnerability. Right? Because we are only loved if you're perfect. True compassion and love says, oh, I hear you. This is a real need, and it's truly giving care to self. It's taking care of self to reach out to resources and support and to get our needs met that we have now, to love ourselves back into well-being. And this is how we become our number one support and caregiver, by developing this relationship where we can actually hear the true needs, right? Be with self long enough to understand what they are, listening deeply without judgment, and then feeling that willingness or openness to being vulnerable enough to take care of those needs, to reach out and find our supports, and to have, mindfulness gives us a lot of the tools and skills that then we can apply to meeting the needs that we find, to nurturing ourselves back into well-being. So I invite you this week, Ask yourself, are you your own number one source of support and loving, compassionate self-care? And what could you do this week to shift a little more into being that for your own self? If you enjoy these talks and would like to join us for group sessions or individual coaching, you can find us at newleafmindfulness.com. You can also find these teachings and many more in my book, Living from the Heart, Healing Ourselves So We Can Heal the World. You can find that anywhere you buy your audio or print books. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I hope to see you all very soon.